Okay, this is reduce, so one of the many functions you can use for an array. Salah. Oh yeah. So the function takes in two parameters. The first one would be the callback function. Yeah. And it will return a single value, so it could be anything really. So unlike find, obviously you get it has to be a value in an array, but in reduce it can be anything. It's probably the closest to a for loop for me. And this is an example of reduce, probably the first one everyone will ever see, calculating the total. So the total initial value will be 0, so that's when it's set. If it's not set, then it will be the first value of the array. And when you return this value, it will be passed into the next callback function in the next iteration.
Sorry, so that 0 is saying that you're starting the count at 0?
I'll get to that.
Oh, I thought you said something about 0.
Yeah. So this is how it's done. So you replace the array.prototype with the actual array. And as I mentioned earlier, it takes in two values. So first will be the callback. So this is the my rough version of the callback function. So the first two are compulsory, and the index in an array is optional. So the first one is the accumulator. So depending whether you pass in the initial value or not, if you pass in the initial value in the first iteration, the accumulator would be the initial value, but as it's optional, you can decide not to. If you don't, then the accumulator would be the first value of the array, and the current value will be the second value of the array. If you do pass in the initial value, the current value in the first iteration will be the first value of the array. For the index, the first iteration will be different once again, depending on whether you pass initial value. If you do, then the first index value will be 0. If not, as the accumulator set to the first value of the array, then there's no point running the first iteration. So instead, the first value of the index will be 1. So you can set the accumulator to anything, and then pass it to the next callback function. This is a rough comparison, so the source code will be very different. So really, where the I starts, the index starts, depends on whether the accumulator is passed or not. So if there is an accumulator, then the first index will be 1, and the first value will be the first. So this array index of 0, so 1, and you set the accumulator to the first value. Otherwise, you will just set the first index to 0, and it just loops through the array. And we're going to make examples in the snippet. Escape. So the first one will be the total. So the first thing I'll do is create the for loop. So when you create a for loop, we write the keyword for and then put parentheses. So inside the parentheses, it will be the index. So what I'll do is initialize the index outside the for loop, and then I would like to start it from 0, and then initialize an array as well. So I call that nums, be more descriptive. And I would like to run it how many iterations, so I would like to run it throughout the array length. As the index starts from 0, it run up to 2, so I would like to be less than 3. Or you can easily get that by getting the length of the array, so you don't have to actually hard code it. And then how many times do I want to iterate it, so it'll be once. So what I will do is initialize the total, so I'll call it sum and initialize that as 0. And every iteration I'll increment it by the value in the index. So what I will do to access the value in the array, you put the array name and then you put square brackets and put the index, and that should be it. So I'll just see if it works. I'm not sure if I've done it right. How would I? Oh yes, Mac. Sum isn't defined. Probably because it's in scope, because use let. I'll copy this. I'll just type it in instead. So I can't find the okay. Let's try to save this. I'll save as. Oh, yes. So this one is interesting because it's supposed to return 5, but instead it got 6.
Is it? Why 5? Yeah, that's right. 1 plus 2 plus 2, yeah?
I remember I had this point. I remember I did that, but I can't remember how I figured this one out.
Well, why should it return 5? Because you start I equals 1, maybe. That's the only reason why you should return 5, right?
Okay, it does return 5.
Oh.
But
When you write
I've
that,
done it. But I've done it. Obviously, it's not correct.
Yeah, I'm not defending that. I'm trying to figure out why it don't file in the past, right? Because if you initialize I equals 1, it will skip the first value of the array.
Skip one, yeah.
That let index line, why is it there?
Yes, I think you spotted that because I didn't initialize the index. Now it comes.
No, it's 0.
Oh, it's because let me just change this one to.
I'm on the middle.
And this one too, yeah.
And isn't there another one? So do you actually need the let index then? Because it worked without it.
Oh no, because normally I'll initialize inside it.
You initialize what, sorry?
I'll do it instead of doing this. I'll just put let in here.
Oh, right, I see.
Okay, then I get 6. Does anyone know where I went wrong here?
So again, sir?
Does anyone know, like, because it's definitely wrong.
Well, your spacing isn't right, but I'm sure you're looking for a more technical issue.
Why is it wrong?
The spacing.
So you see that it's wrong. It's wrong, like the result is wrong, or the elegance is wrong. Or...
I mean, it's a 6, isn't it? Yeah, it's supposed to be 5.
Yeah, but that's fine, right? It should be done 6. 1 plus 2 plus 3.
Oh, yes. I can't count.
Maybe there's something hidden. No one can notice. 1 plus 2 plus 3 is to be 6, right?
Oh, okay.
Since the Greeks.
Even before that.
Even before that.
Yeah, so this time I'm going to reduce it. So so instead of writing full it, I could reduce it. Just keep the array here. So return a single value. Reduce. So I will put the actual array, and then I'll call the function reduce, and then we'll take in two values. So the first one will be the callback function. So I'll call it I'll pass in the accumulator. So it's accumulator and the next one I have to pass. Well, it's optional, but I'm going to. So I'll pass it at 0 as the initial value. And I'm going to increment the total with the current value, and then I'll return. So I'll pass the new total to the next iteration. So let's see, it might not work. Okay, it's oh yes, it's because okay, it works I guess. So what I've just done, so this right here will be the callback function. So this is the total, and then the current value is processing. So what I've done was I've taken the total from the last iteration, and I incremented with the current value of the array, and then the last thing I did, and you have to return a value for the next iteration. You could just not put you could not put the initial value and it will still work, because it sets the first value, which is 1, as the initial value. But the problem can come if I decide to, if the array is empty, and it will become, well, if we do it in a for loop, it will be undefined. But in this example, it will say this initial value with the empty array. But if I keep the initial value, the array won't run, obviously. So it will just return the initial value, 0. So I'm going to move to the next example.
Or of when you can't use arrow function in your function.
You can if you want.
Okay.
So we'll try and reduce the length of it. So put the arrow here. And set do total plus current value. So this is one line. You don't need to do return, but if I keep the parentheses, the curly braces, then you have to return it. But if I remove the return, then I should throw an error. It's just one line. Oh yeah, because it didn't run. The loop didn't run. That's why. Yeah. So it returned as undefined because it didn't return anything. So every iteration, except for the first one, the total will be undefined. But if I remove the curly braces and I put it all into one line, so this is one line. It works. But if I decided to put another block of code, so if I decided to do this, let's say equals 5, it's giving syntax error anyway, so you don't have to run that to see it won't work.
I'm sorry, what were you trying to achieve when you were putting the let after the arrow function? What was meant to have happened that didn't?
As there's no curly braces around the callback function, you only could put one block of code, and it has to be what it returns. So if
I understand this line, like how it is, but then it's like you wanted something to happen when you put let something equals 5, but it didn't happen.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
was it you were trying to make happen?
It's trying to show that it won't let you put 2 blocks of code
Right.
without having curly braces.
Okay.
So, any questions before I move on? No questions, I guess. I probably won't have time to get through all these examples, but I'll try my best. So, the next one will be filtering an array. So I will do this. So I put more values in the array, and what I like to do is filter out all of the ones in this array.
All of them also?
Ones. So I just want to have an array of just the ones. So with reduce, if you want to do this, you have to well, in the normal formula you have to create a new array and then push it. So you can do that in reduce as well, as it can return anything. So I'll call that. I'll call it the variable filtered. So on the array I'll call it reduce, and I'll pass in the accumulator. Yeah, pass in the accumulator and the current value of the array. And what I have to do, what I'm going to do in this one, as I'm going to create a new array and return a new array, I'll initialize the reduce as an array. And in here, I'll check if the value is 1, and if it is, then I'll push it into the accumulator, and then after that I'll return it. So I'll put if block, so I'll check if sorry. I'll check if the current value is 1, and if it is, I will push the value into the accumulator. So I'll push in the current value. You don't need to return this, as it returned the new length array. So what we should do is push it first, and then return the accumulator. We'll pass on the new array into the next callback function. If the current value is a 1, then it will be unchanged. Next error.
Can you hover over it again? A missing bracket. Yeah. Does it not go there where you were before, under the return, after the empty array?
Yeah.
Can anyone see what the issue is?
Yeah, there's a bracket missing.
Let me see if might be as a function.
No.
No, I
Yeah,
think it's in the
so
first, like, the reduce has got two halves, two bracket halves, and then you never have another half for that.
That's correct.
That's fine. It comes right at the end after the empty array.
Look, the error is gone.
Huh?
The error is gone.
Yep, so
Now it's back.
I was thinking.
So that's interesting. I cannot see any problem, to be honest. I think this snippet is correct.
Your thing is still running. What's doing? The incorrect. Look on the right. No.
My computer
It still runs.
yeah, that's the thing, right? So that's the wrong thing, right? Wrong. Not you, wrong.
Yeah, so I thought there's something wrong with this reduce, but it seems to have worked. So I'll show you like how it's done by just using a for loop instead, so you can just compare it. So I'll initialize the filtered array. That's an empty array. And then I'll write a for loop, so then I'll define the first index as 0 and I'll run it throughout the length of the array. So it has to be less than the length. I'll increment it by 1. And I'll check if the value in the index is equal to 1. And if it is, then and I'll push it. I'll push the number into the new array filtered. I think it should be it. Okay.
Your full body's got
Yeah.
the length of the. You're checking for the length of the numbers.
Yes, the spawn actually. Yeah. Thanks, Fusion. Yeah, so it looks a bit shorter, I guess, because I'm not returning anything. I'm just pushing it into the filtered, but it's nice to see, to compare with the for loop. So any questions? Just have a go left. So the next one would be removing duplicates from an array. Do you name it right, I guess. So I'll probably just randomize this one this bit. It's not need spaces, but I'm going to do it as fast as I can here. So I probably won't write it for all of this time, I'll just reduce it. So again, I'll call the reduce on the numbers array. I'll probably name it better, so name the accumulator, I'll put I'll call it unique array, as the accumulator will be an array of unique values, and and I'll pass in the current value, which I have to do as well. And I'll use the arrow function, the pullback function, and lastly I'll pass an array as the initial value. So what I'm going to do is check if the value it's processing is in the unique array. So if it isn't, then I'll push it. So I'll use the includes. So if I check if the unique array includes the current value, and as I would like to check if it's not in the unique array, I'll negate this, and if it meets this condition, I'll push it into the unique array. So I push the current value in the unique array. So and then as usual, I have to return a value for the next callback function. Yeah, let's see if it works. I'll have to initialize. Call this unique. It's hard to tell if I missed out anything.
Yeah, and you have the number 6 somewhere as once.
But 4 should be unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
Six somewhere.
No, sorry, no,
Oh,
that's
right.
right. That is right. So 4 is unique. But for example, 1 is not unique clearly, right? So you're supposed to return just these numbers, so yes, ones. For example, number one is at least 3 times.
I mean, I named it wrong. I named it wrong. I was meant to say removing duplicates from the array.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, I named it wrong.
Right, so you're removing the duplicated values.
Yeah.
Right, then it's correct. You see, if it doesn't work, we change the question until it matches our algorithm.
Should I do that one as well then?
Sorry? No, because he's trying to do something different. He's trying to remove the duplicated values. If the value is once, add it. If the value is twice, add it just once. So for example, number 1 is 3 times, but then in the result it's just once. Cool.
Yeah, sorry about that. I named that one wrong.
That's right, that was fun.
So how much time have I left? Not much time. We see the objects.
Yes.
Oh yeah, probably the last one then. So normally in a for loop, you could just use the enhanced for loop. So you can do let key in an object which I haven't defined. Just an object. And then just console log the value, so the accent by object pass the key through the square brackets. Well, so you can't do that zip, I guess. So instead I'll just pass it into an array, new array. So I'll push it in instead. The value in the value, the object, the value of the key, object key. Yeah, so this is how you just loop through. It's a classic for loop. But as it's reduced, I'm going to try and reduce this instead. But as reduce only works on an array, you've got to somehow convert the object keys into an array. So what I could do is do objects, I think a class, and then the function with keys.
Where are we trying to get to with this question? What do we want as the answer?
I'll just convert all the keys into an array.
Yeah, I get that, but yeah, what are we looking for? Like the last question, we were looking for duplicates. What are we doing in this question? Are we just getting an array of keys? Is that what we're doing? What are we going to reduce once we have the keys?
I'm just going to get the sum.
Okay, the sum.
Yeah. So, and I'll pass in the object, and they should give an array of keys. There's another way you could do it, but this is much more new and might not be compatible with some browsers, but you can just get the values as well. So you can do objects, values, and the objects, and if I show the values, you get the values. If you decided not to use this function, you could. So for these keys, you could then map this to get the values instead. So you could do key, and then return the value instead. So you could do objects and key, and I'll just change the two values. And there's the values. But I'm not going to do that. You could easily just reduce this and get the total. But I'm going to try and do without getting the values of the array. So we'll be passing sum and the community with the key. And in the end, you have to return something, so I'll return the sum. What I'm going to do with the sum, I'm going to increment it with the value of the object. So the value. I've got the arrow.
Does it work?
Guess I'll see if it works.
Ah,
It doesn't,
it's giving you A to 8.
because it's taking the same.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah. It works. So
Just leave it. Don't get
Before
rid
you
of it.
delete that,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna delete it.
Okay, just leave it.
Just ask any questions.
No, he had the question.
oh, sorry. So what I often perhaps want to do is maybe add another property to an existing object. So, for example, could we add a sum key to that object and then put the sum in? If you don't know how to do this, that's cool. But
Yeah, I don't know how to do it.
Ricardo, at some point, could we do that? So, if I wanted to add we've got A, B, and C as the keys. If I wanted to add another key as C, and then actually put the sum total in there, and then return the whole object.
You wouldn't talk about, sorry, it again?
So another key into the object
Another key?
called sum, and then
Sum.
actually have the value of 11 at the end of that object.
Well, that's fine. Then the only thing you need to do is on line number 8.
Yeah.
Can you do Osman line number 8?
Which when you say number
And
8.
then the one you can do obj dot sum equals total, right?
Literally add one.
And
So
then
then if you display the object, now you have 4 keys, A, B, C, and sum. Let's display the object. Display the entire object. That's obj, like that. Yeah.
Okay, which is a sum. So you do it outside the reducer first.
Yeah. Because first you have to calculate the total, and once you have the total, you save it.
Cool. Yeah.
So let's have one more.
Then
No?
I don't know what time it is. Probably after 11.
I think you can do it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So call it a day, or shall I do?
No.
You call it a day, okay.
Or we got a little summary thing on that.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I've got like I
No,
can
no,
merge
okay,
it and
okay.
like recurrences,
Yeah,
but there's no time for that. So yeah, thank you for your patience with me, and yeah, thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Thank
you.
Cool, thank you.
One more thing before you leave. No, you can leave, but not anyone else. Because Osman said something very interesting. In one of the examples, he mentioned we could use, so if we have an object equals a1, whatever, right? So to get the values, we can use object.values object, but this is not very supported today, right? So these problems may happen. That JavaScript releases a very nice and sexy feature like this one, but unfortunately you cannot use it yet because the browser doesn't support it yet. So for these kind of cases, there are some resources on the internet that help you to see if your browser or your browser stack will support that or not. So for example, there is a nice website called, I think, ES6 Matrix. Maybe? Yes, Kangas, that one. Right. So this is a very good reference, because then you can see, for example, that example, object. Let me have a look. Values. Let me see how to search object. Yeah, sometimes I struggle to find things here, but I'm sure we can do it. So ES6 matrix JavaScript object.values. Or otherwise, if you struggle, you can always go to MDN, which is the Mozilla Foundation website, where it tells you how to use everything, right? So here probably that will be even easier, right? So you can see that object.values is now supported by most of the major browsers, except Internet Explorer, right? And also interestingly, this is very, 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 very interesting. So it's supported by Node as well. Right? So for example, on the first, some months ago, we did a coding challenge here, and someone tried to use object values, and it didn't work. And the reason why it was because at that time we had CodeDD deployed to Heroku, and it was running with Node 6. So the message was object.values is not a function, blah blah blah, right? So after upgrading, now it's fully supported. Any question? No? Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Osman.